chairperson for this session is Professor Dr. Murthy. He's from the Department of English, Muhammad Sadr College of Arts and Science. He has 5 years of experience, and he will be the chairperson for this session. I request Dr. Professor Murthy to take over the session. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. I have wonderful opportunity for the chairperson, the sessions, the observing, Dr. Pooja Malik, Assistant Professor, Amit School of Liberal Arts, Amit University, Haryana. You presenting topic, the changing dimensions of feminism in Manju Kapoor, home and the married woman. You start now.
Good morning to one and all. I would like to share my screen.
Yes. You start. Start, ma.
Just
Dr. Pooja.
yes, sir. I'm going to start now.
Yes.
May I know is my screen visible?
Yes. Okay. Visible.
Okay. Once again, good morning to one and all. The paper which I'm going to present today, the title of that paper is The Changing Dimensions of Feminism in Manju Kapoor's Home, a Married Woman. So I would like to start. This is an image of the author Manju Kapoor, which you can see here. Now, in the starting, I would like to start with the introduction of the author Manju Kapoor. She was born in 1948 in Amritsar. She has worked as a professor of English literature at Miranda House College, Delhi. She is the author of 6 novels till now. The first is Difficult Daughters, and for this she won the Commonwealth Prize and was a #1 bestseller in India. Second is A Married Woman. Third is A Home. These 2 novels which I have taken for the research in this paper for the analysis. Number 4th is The Immigrant. Then number 5th was The Custody, and number 6 was The Brothers, which came in 2016. Now start with the research paper. This research paper is oriented on the new shade of Indian feminism, which is imparted vibrantly by Manju Kapoor in her 2 novels. First, A Married Woman, and second, A Home. Second is Home. First, I would like to discuss about the background of the research. In the male-dominated Indian society, women's individual self has a very little recognition, and as a result, self-effacement is a normal way of life. This life of suffering, silence, and pain has been prevalent in the delineation of women characters in earlier women novelists. This is something very common in the characters of earlier women novelists, where we find the women characters only sulking and sighing just because of the odds of their lives. They are frustrated, they are suffering, but they don't want to take any stand against that wrong. However, the modern Indian novelists have brought a tremendous change in depicting women characters in their narratives. The protagonists of these authors have a spark in themselves and allow that spark to come out. These in modern Indian novelists don't delineate their characters as just a victim of the odds of their life. These characters try to change the circumstances of their lives with their efforts. Now we discuss about the significance of the research. The significance of the research lies in the fact that while most of the other novelists focus on the isolation, depression, and frustration of their female characters, Manju Kapoor presents her protagonist as an image of never-dying spirit who breaks social and familial restrictions without surrendering and getting frustrated. This is the new angle which I want to analyze through this paper. In this, the other contemporary authors of Manju Kapoor, we can take the example of Bharti Mukherjee and some other novelists. The character of these novelists get frustrated because of the problems of their lives, and they surrender before the circumstances. they lose their control over the situations. But the characters of Manju Kapoor, they always try to struggle against these problems and they want to achieve whatever they want to get from their lives. What is the objective of this research? The purpose of this research is to explore the modern form of feminism through the characters of Astha and Nisha, who are the protagonists of a married woman and home respectively. These two are the main characters of novels, and the character of these two of Astha and Nisha are the representative of the changing form of dynamism in Indian scenario especially. First, I would like to discuss about A Married Woman. The second novel of Manju Kapoor, A Married Woman, gives the impression of an ordinary narrative based on the life of protagonist Astha. But as we move forth in the narration, we feel ourselves captivated in the guest of Astha, which is found so common in the life of a married woman, especially in Indian context. Astha struggles in her life as a daughter in law, as a wife, as a mother, as a friend, as a daughter, but still she continues to move on her path without stopping herself, without stopping her never ending spirit. She doesn't want to stop at any angle in her life, at any problem in her life. She always tries to make a new way, to find a new way, how to develop herself, how to improve herself, how to prove herself. But still Astha gets success in her efforts to make her own identity through her non-stop struggle, first as a teacher and then as a painter. At the same time, she accepts the familial responsibilities without getting frustrated and blaming anyone for her struggle. This is the example of her dynamic spirit, of a realistic spirit. When she never blames anyone for the problems of her life, she always tries to accept the problems, the oddities, and then she tries to make her own way among those problems, those oddities. The next novel which I have taken in the consideration is Home. Home is Manju Kapoor's third novel. It depicts the journey of the protagonist Nisha from her illusion of a home to her self-disillusionment about home. Okay, this novel is a journey from the illusion to disillusionment. Despite being born in a strict patriarchal family, she becomes a successful businesswoman just because of her positive, never ending, dynamic attitude towards life. Though she gets physically exploited in her own house and is not allowed to marry as per her desire, yet she accepts the harsh realities of her day-to-day life with great patience and adjusts with them quite successfully. She is the one who proves herself a successful businesswoman. She starts from the zero. She doesn't get support from her family. She gets criticism from her surroundings, but still she continues to struggle. She fights against the diseases of her body. She fights against the psychological problems which she has to face because of her physical exploitation. But lastly, she proves herself as a successful businesswoman. Then she enters into a married life. She becomes the proud mother of two children, and lastly she gets the fulfillment of a woman, of womanhood, and a successful married life. Now we come to the conclusion. Through the analysis, an attempt has been made to highlight the changing dimensions of feminism in modern authors, where it has shifted from suffering and sulking to struggle and achievements. These two protagonists of Manju Kapoor, they achieve whatever they want to get in their lives. They faces problems, but they never surrender before the problems, and they continue to move on their path of struggle, on their way of achievements. Yes, this was the end of my presentation. Now can I start the screen share?
Thank you, Pooja Malik. Your presentation is very well. Any questions from audience? Any question?
Yes, sir, I can hear. Can you hear me? The question is,
The screen share, please.
the question is, there are two protagonists in the novels of Manju Kapoor. So today's woman, uh, which character we have to follow? Can you hear me?
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can hear you.
You have presented the two characters, woman characters from the two novels. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So today's woman, if they want to take as a role model, which character they should follow in their life?
Actually, I believe that women should form their own way of life. They can take anyone as the role model, but we know very well that the circumstances of individual are different from each other. So we can move on the way which can give us satisfaction, which can give us the feeling of achievers. We can take the people as role model, but we should not try to follow them as it is. We should try to understand our circumstances, then we should try to mold the situation as per our demands, requirements. But at the same time, we have to fix our own morals, on ethics. We have a sense, we should develop a sense of responsibilities. We cannot escape from our responsibilities on the name of feminism. It is a healthy, as I think that it is a healthy approach towards feminism, where we have to move on by developing an adjustment in our desires, in our achievements with our familial responsibilities. Being a woman is a boon. It is not a curse. We should not blame ourselves that we are women, we have to suffer, we have to struggle more than the male parts of the society. At the same time, we should take the womanhood as a bless from the God. We have the special speciality in ourselves, and we should feel them, we should recognize them.
Okay, madam. Any questions? No. Thank you. Your presentation is very well. Malik, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
Next presenter. Sharudi. Sorry. Shruti Krishna Das. Research scholar, University of Calicut. Krishna Das.
Yes, thank you, sir.
You presented the topic language as a cultural identity, the practice of code switching by celebrities. You start now.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. My paper is titled as Language as a Cultural Identity, the Practice of Code Switching by Celebrities. First, I would explain what is this code switching. In an article for Encyclopedia Britannica, Carol D. Morrison defined code switching as the process of shifting from one linguistic code to another, depending on the social context or conversational setting. Our identity is a blend of our intrinsic self, our absolute identity, and our contextual identity, which is the way we adapt to our ever-changing. Deriving satisfaction from life requires a balance between these two identities, and often our professional or personal challenges can be traced back to a failure to understand and integrate one or the other. This can be particularly difficult when we attempt to reconcile the survival tactic of code switching with our absolute identity. Rather than code switching as a reactive, defensive mechanism, we can find greater success and satisfaction by its place in our contextual identity and set boundaries consistent with our absolute identity. Let me explain more about this code switching. Studies beginning in the early 20th century looked at code switching
1
as
minute, ma'am. Krishna Das, ma'am. One minute.
Yes.
The duration only 10 minutes.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
I will continue.
You start now.
Studies beginning in the early 20th century looked at code switching as a linguistic practice by minority ethnic groups. The term has come to signify switching not only language but affect dress and other forms of social presentation when in different communities. The child of immigrant parents might speak one language at home and another at work, or they might speak the same language and modify their accent depending on the listener. A black judge might use specific vocabulary from the bench that differs greatly from their word choices at a family reunion. By code switching, we protect both ourselves and our connection to a certain community, often one that is a minority or is marginalized. As minorities, code school or work, we protect ourselves from judgment and discrimination by adhering to the norm. When we switch in our minority community, we maintain a special connection to others who share a language, dialect, and presentation. Whether done with conscious intent or habitually, it has been shown that code switching can be a source of frustration, strain, and burnout for minorities who recognize the perils of failing to switch, a lapse that can lead to negative consequences. People switching typically recognize that they get a benefit from this ability. They are better able to fit into their different situations, and it can facilitate career advancement, connection, and other forms of success that come from being accepted within a group. However, the switch exists on a spectrum. We can make deliberate choices about what changes we make in order to fit in. Um, Sometimes people tend to think about code switching in a negative way. The best example is the Bollywood actress Priyanka Chopra. Priyanka Chopra, undoubtedly India's first big global star, has criticism for putting on a fake American accent. Priyanka Chopra, who had both studied abroad and learned diction to prepare for Miss World, currently speaks globalized, accentless English, far different from what most Indians in modern India use. For her Bollywood movies, Chopra spoke Hindi or Indian accented English, and for her role in Quantico or other Hollywood movies, Chopra used slightly American accented English. This sort of code switching is employed by actors everywhere to adapt to a role, but Chopra gets criticism for hers because her Indian accent is seen as an abandonment of her roots, her Deshi roots. Conversely, actress Deepika Padukone, who kept her Indian accent steady regardless of global or local projects, received praises because she bounded to her Indian roots. The practice of altering between multiple languages, dialects, or accents according to context is no unique feat. Multilingual people routinely slip into their mother tongues when they feel discomfort, danger, or want to make a point without out. Code switching helps people navigate the world because using multiple different codes help people bond better, communicate better, and get what they need done. When NPR, National Public Radio, launched Code Switch, a blog covering race, ethnicity, and gender, they solicited stories on how people shifted the languages they spoke to express themselves better. One of the instances was about an American woman trying to fit in when she lived in Ireland. The woman told to NPR, "We lived in Ireland some years ago and noticed there were often two prices for goods and services. Reasonable prices for the locals and much expensive costs for Americans. It was not easy, but I practiced my Irish accent until we qualified for local pricing." In India, code switching is common, especially in metropolitan cities where people alternate between languages at rapid fire speed for good reason. Tons changes from those reserved for parents to those reserved for the house help to those reserved for the friends in a matter of minutes. While those who come from pedigreed educations manage this with ease, those into competitive workplaces or peer groups from vernacular focused education find it harder. Often, when one code switches to disguise class difference, it becomes a personal act of catching up. In Amazon Prime's web series Made in Heaven, the protagonist Tara assimilates perfectly among Delhi's rich crowd, having been raised and trained her entire life to do so. Whereas another character, Jaspreet, is leagues behind while trying to accomplish the same goal. When she introduces herself as Jazz in her very first scene, it is a clear tell at her attempt to code switch, earning derision from her immediate boss rather than positive interest. While code switching works extremely And at home, if someone is caught mid-code switch, they are immediately seen as a poser because the illusion of balance and control is broken. The code switcher often cannot explain why they have subconsciously adapted, fueling further distrust. Revealing the truth that either side is not good enough for the other would cause defensiveness and further dislike. The relationship between language and identity is perhaps the root cause for the dislike and distrust that stems from a code switching discrepancy. Most often, language is a major identifier of who a person is, where they come from, and what culture they see as home. Beyond this, language is also a socio-economic factor, with some languages dominating how communication is carried out while others slowly die out. So, when a person chooses a dominant language like English and speaks in a way that erases their cultural marker, it translates almost like a betrayal to those who grew up in the same environment as them. To conclude, I would like to make the remark that code switching, while still controversial, has been a secret balm for the multiple anxieties of those who do not understand it. While it sometimes subconsciously pushes the idea that some cultures are better than others, it also creates more diverse, globally mobile individuals. Maybe it's time to embrace the assortment of multiple languages, dialects, and accents that make up an individual as a part of their journey rather than yet another manifestation of age old insecurities. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, audience? Any questions?
Yes, sir. One question, sir. For example, I'm an Indian, sir. I'm going to America. If I'm doing if I'm changing my dialect, if I'm speaking American accent English, will I lose my culture and identity by speaking an American accent?
Uh, no, sir. I don't. I don't think so because, um, just as I said, code switching is a tool for survival. It's a technique for survival. So, when if you are living in America, mm, you might be need to use this American accented English for better acceptance, but that doesn't change your identity as an Indian.
Okay, okay, okay. Very well, your presentation, Krishna Das.
Thank you.
Next presenter, Grisha, AL, Research Scholar, Ethiraj College for Women in Chennai. They presented the topic, the pragmatics of novels, Faulkner, and amalgamations of spiritual and the universal wisdom through the eye- eyes of staring care to the fragment of Faulkner and amalgamation of spiritual and the universal wisdom through the eyes of the Eastern Crane. The start.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, actually, the title has been reprinted, so it has been really long to read. Thank you so much, sir, taking much effort. Actually, it has been reprinted over there. Yeah,
Yeah.
yes, sir. Thank you. So, yeah, let me start my presentation. The paramount of folklore and amalgamation of spiritual and universal wisdom through the eyes of Eastern care.
Okay. You start now.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Grisha,
Yes, sir.
Grisha.
Yes, sir.
Your duration only 10 minutes.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. I will
Okay.
keep up that time, sir.
Okay. You start now.
So I'm a research scholar and I'm doing a research on the novels written by Eastern Care, and this is one perspective I just want to discuss on in this presentation. So it's about the author. Eastern Care is a renowned novelist poet who were born to the Naga tribe Angami on 29th March 1959 in Nagaland. She is currently staying in northern Norway. Naga Village Remembered by Eastern Kair is the first ever English novel published by an author from Nagaland. It was published in 2003. The second novel of Keir was published in 2007, named A Terrible Matriarchy, which unveils the depth of Naga culture through the life of Leono, the female protagonist. Mari, 2010, it got published. Her feminist novel is written on a backdrop of Japanese invasion in Nagaland. The novel revolves around a young mother and the hardships she had to endure. Bitter Wormwood, her fourth novel, depicts the intense suffering caused to the Nagas during their fight for freedom. In 2011, the novel was shortlisted for the Hindu Literary Prize, and she was awarded with a few more awards. And her novel, the When the River Sleeps, 2014, won the Hindu Prize in 2014, and other novel, Son of the Thundercloud, was shortlisted for this prize as well. Uh, Willie and Billy, the protagonists of these novels, take an expedition to Revelation, the expedition which unravels the Naga culture by encounter a spiritual nature of the state. The essence of the folklores and other oral narratives of the Nagas is the combination of the divine and universal wisdom. The Naga culture is propagated through these. Pili knew about the relevance of the storytellers from Misuo, and these stories aim to eliminate the shame, fear, extreme desires from people. Also, these they have a safe people from darker side of humanity by outspreading hope and compassion. Thus, the righteousness and sagacity of human soul revolving around Naga culture and tradition are promulgated through these stories and
Grisha,
folklores.
Grisha,
Yes, sir.
visible the slide.
Uh, is it not visible, sir? My slide is.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Is it visible now, sir?
Yes. You
Yeah,
start
thank
now.
you. Yeah. And coming to the spiritual world of the Nagas are overlooked by the dark ones, people who thrive on fear and greed, and they disseminate despair, distrust, and hatred, destroying the Naga tradition and culture. The writings of Kaya cover for endorsing the people who neglect their own culture or the dark ones. So, studying legends, stories, folklores from the northeast region of India brings us in confrontation with such paradoxes and social political complexities, and yet focusing on the melody that is ever present on conflict of the conscience pervades all in great literature of the world. So, the complexity of multiculturalism and cultural diversity, particularly in societies with both indigenous and immigrant communities, also illegal immigrants in the recent decades, they were also encroaching the lands. So, require cultural policies to check any form of hegemony in the realm of literary expressions. So, a challenge to both the domiciled and the writers living outside the region lies in the fact that while lying at the heart of the community's identity and cultural heritage, they are representing phenomena that are constantly recreating and studied in retrospect, as poets and artists also bring innovative perspective to their work. So therefore traditional creativity is marked by a dynamic interplay between collective and individual creativity, and it is insignificant to locate this dynamic within the parameter of academics too. The literary expression from the Northeast are ever changing. The wind of change has reflected in the literature produced by the Naga writers and poets too. Culture survives on the shoulders of its stakeholders, that is, the people, the individuals who live every bit of it in their day to day life. Culture is not simply a habit or living a style of a community, but consists of its dream, aspiration, belief, suffering, agony, stories, songs, and myths too. culture is a light of hope that nourishes the life of generations. So the writers who are products of culture are the carriers of the light of hope that transcends the socio-cultural religious barrier and connects the world with the spiritual bridge of emotions on the common grounds of intersections between humanism and divinity. And coming to this application of folklore in the novels, and here I have applied with the Son of Thunderclouds and When the River Sleeps, written by Eastern Care. In the oral narratives of Nagas, folklores, and myths are embedded. The origin of Naga clans are tied to various myths, which are believed to be in the fountainhead of the ancestors of the clans. The novel of Kair are an implication to the myths which persists among Nagas. Her famous novel, Son of the Thunderclouds, having an origin myth of Nagas as a core story. In the novel, Mesanuo was impregnated by a single raindrop, just as Disili Musiro in the myth. The myth of a long laundry trek explains that the Ago Nagas considerations of six stones as the source of their ancestral genesis. So the spirituality of the six stones is comparable to the heart stone from the novel When the River Sleeps. The outstanding landscape of Nagaland, along with its supernatural elements, is presented in the novel of Kair, culminated in the disclosure of isolation, swathed culture of Nagas, and instinctive wisdom of mankind. So, the natural world of the Nagas is presumed to be the abode of mystical beings. Crescendence is given to the spirits residing in stones, rivers, forests, trees, as well as every strand of eldritch nature. Willie loved a girl named Mizuo, and who was a gentle mannered and tender faced girl. When she was returning to home from the forest after plucking flowers, a spirit from the tree accompanied her. After a few days, she passed away, and due to anonymity of her death, she was buried outside the village. So here, to end my presentation, I just wanted to give a glance like how it is all interconnected and how it is like interlead to connect nature's spiritual thing and the humans. So the natural supernatural world of the Nagas, which is unfathomable to a cynic, is reflected through the incomprehensible and baleful effect of the spirit. Rarhuria, which is referred as unclean forest, is evaluated by the villagers as a dwelling of diverse spirits that abduct children in order to play with them and using melodic songs for their fantasizing the adults. So Ketenuo and Seeds are the characters in the novel Son of the Thundercloud were transformed into spirits. So gradually their body starts to disappear. So Pili looks on as Ketenuo's sleds being transformed into a spirit from while she was bids farewelling. And therefore Kair, through all these novels, and especially from the novel Son of the Thunder Cloud and through the river speaks, When the River Speaks, from those novels she wanted to just bridge the disparities among the nature spiritual world and the human world as well. So hereby end my presentation, and thank you so much for listening to me.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for audience? Okay, thank you. Griyash, thank you. Your presented is very well. Next presented the Priyadashni, the legal provisions and the judicial response in India for the woman empowerment.
Hello, sir. Hello,
Yes,
everyone. Yeah, so I would like to share my screen.
Yes, started the present. Priyadashni, are you here?
Hello?
Priyadashni,
Yeah,
start
yes.
the.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. My topic for my paper, the title of my paper is The Legal Provisions and the Judicial Response in India for the Women Empowerment. So, we know the concept of general justice entails ending the inequalities between the gender in all the spheres of life, and empowerment of women is critical aspects of achieving gender justice as it decides the development of a country. And the women in all societies are confronted with many challenges, including whether it is physical, mental, sexual harassment, where India is no exception. And we know that gender justice is a problem across the world, in spite of presence of many international, national legal provisions for the protection and promotion of women rights. And in our country, in India, we have many legal provisions, including the Constitution of India. The Constitution of India includes many provisions to secure gender equality and also to protect the women rights, putting them on the equal footing with men, socially, also economically, politically. And even our Indian judiciary, especially the Supreme Court of India, has been working as the guardian of the women rights actively. So in my article, it is an attempt to discuss the legal provisions for the protection of women and also the role of the judiciary. So as I have already mentioned that Constitution of India also included many provisions for the protection of the rights of the woman. The fundamental law for land grants equality as well as the empowers the state to adopt positive measures in favor of women for neutralizing the cumulative social, economic, and educational and political disadvantages faced by them. And we know that we have fundamental rights, and fundamental rights prohibit the discrimination on the basis of whether it is sex or religion, caste, etc., and assures equal opportunity in case of public employment, and that is Article 16. And few specific articles are also codified in our Constitution of India. Among those, few articles are very, very important. That is Article 15, Clause 4. It provides the capacities of the state to create special arrangement for promoting interest and the welfare of the social and economically backward classes. That means we can include women also. And Article 16, it provides equality, equal of opportunity for all the citizens, including women, in the matter relating to the employment or appointment or to any public office. Then we have Article 39. It requires the state to direct its policy towards enduring for the men and women equally the rights and adequate measures of livelihood. Then we have Article 39A, directs the state to promote justice on the basis of equal opportunity and to promote free legal aid by suitable legislature or schemes or any other way to assure that opportunity for ensuring justice are not denied to any citizen by reason of economic or any other disabilities. Am I audible?
You are audible. Yes, you can continue.
Then we have one more article that is very, very important. It's Article 42. It directs the state to make provisions for the securing justice and conditions, human conditions for of work and also maternity relief to the woman. Then we have fundamental duties. The Article 51A, it declares that it is the fundamental duty of every Indian citizen to renounce practices to respect the dignity of the woman. After that, Indian Parliament passed Human Rights Protection of Human Rights Act 1993 for the proper implementation of Article 51A, and in that, with the help of that act, also we can protect, we can empower the women in our country. Then there is one more amendment that is very, very important, that is 73rd and 74th constitutional amendment, which provides 33% of reservation for the women, both in panchayat as well as nagar palika. So these are the provisions, constitutional provisions. So apart from constitutional provisions, we have many legal provisions, including Indian Penal Code. In Indian Penal Code, there are many provisions. Like we have the provisions of section 376, that is rape. Because it is punishable offense, we know. Then with kidnapping and abduction of women under section 363 to 373, and it is obviously a very grave offense. And then there is one more, the section 302, that is homicide for dowry death, and ordered attempts. Then we have one section 498A IPC, that is mental torture and physical torture. We know that if a husband or any of his relative shows cruelty towards his wife, then it is punishable offense, and punishment is up to 3 years of imprisonment or fine will be awarded. Then there is one more provision under IPC, that is molestation, section 354. Then section sexual harassment, which is provided under section 509. So there are many provisions are included in our Indian Penal Code. Moreover, we have many special laws, like special laws are Dowry Prohibition Act 1961. If any person after the commencement of the act gives or takes or abets or giving or taking dowry, shall be punishable with imprisonment for a term which shall not be less than 5 years, and with fine. So it is a grave offense, and we have this act which was passed in the year of 1961. Then after that, there is one more act, that is the Immoral Traffic Prohibition Act 1956. Then one more act, that is the Protection of Women for the Domestic Violence Act 2005. Indian Parliament enacted this act in the year of 2005 for the protection of women from domestic violence. So this act provides for the first time in Indian law for a definition of domestic violence, which is domestic violence. So because according to the definition of domestic violence, which is included in this act, it includes not only physical violence, but also includes all forms of violence, whether it is emotional, verbal, mental, sexual, economic, everything. So it is a civil law meant primarily for the protection of the woman. Then there is one more act, that is sexual harassment of women at the workplaces. There was one landmark case, that is Vishakha versus the Union of India. After that judgment, Parliament enacted this act in the year of 2013 for the protection of those women at workplaces. And then there is one more act, that is the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act. In this act provides termination of certain pregnancies by the registered doctors or medical practitioner for the particular matter and matters connected therewith, only for the benefit of the woman. Then we can use the Equal Remuneration Act 1973 for the empowerment of the women in our country, in India. So there are many legal provisions, including special laws, including Indian Penal Code, and even provisions are mentioned in Constitution of India for the protection for the and empowerment of the women in our country. Then after that, I would like to discuss about the rule of the judiciary, especially the rule of the Supreme Court, the apex court of our country. So the power of the Supreme Court for the protection of the constitutional rights of the citizens are of the widest amplitude, and there is no reason why the court should not adopt the active approach similar like other countries like America, and issue to direct directions to the state. Then therefore many PIL have been filed for the protection and empowerment of the women. So I would like to discuss few important PILs, that means public interest litigation, which was filed in front of Supreme Court. There is one more important case. The name of that case is the Delhi Domestic Working Women's Forum versus Union of India. So in this PIL was filed under Article 32. And this case occurred when 6 working ladies were traveling in the Puri Express, where they were raped by the 7 army personals. And the court, here the EPIC court gave the guidelines for the rehabilitation and also the compensation of the working women who are raped victims. And court gives some directions to the state. Then there is one more landmark case I would like to discuss, that is the Vishakha versus state of Rajasthan. So the Supreme Court laid down guidelines for the sexual harassment of women at the workplaces, because before this case there was no such guidelines from our Supreme Court. So Supreme Court laid down few guidelines for sexual harassment of women at workplaces until some law are formed concern this subject. So the court guided that it is a duty of the employer to protect the woman employee from the sexual harassment at the workplaces. So and in this case, Vishakha is an NGO working for the gender equality. So they filed the PIL. After that, a court gave some guidelines, and these guidelines are very, very important for the protection of women protection of women from sexual harassment at the workplaces. Then there are many other landmark cases by the Supreme Court, like the state of Maharashtra and another versus Madhukar Narayan Mardikar. Then there is one more case, that is the Gita Hariharan versus Reserve Bank of India. In this section, court held that the Section 6, Clause A of Hindu Minority and Guardianship Act 1956 and Section 19, Clause B of Guardian and Wards Act 1890 interpreted in such a way that both father, not only the father, both the father and the woman, the mother, get equal status as the guardian of a minor. So there are many landmark cases by the Supreme Court as well as the high courts of respective states for the protection and empowerment of the women in our country. So now I would like to conclude my paper that the women empowerment is one of women empowerment is one of the aim and objective of our constitution as well as many legislations, but most of the laws are confined and limited to the books only, as the laws are not implemented in the letter and spirit. So actual women empowerment will be done when these laws will be actually implemented without any hesitation. And then the Honorable Supreme Court of India and the High Courts interpreted constitutional provisions in favor of women as well as girl child. Whenever there is an anti-women legislations, rule or order of the government or any other agency, then the court comes into picture and rescue the rights of the women and girl children. So the rule of the judiciary is very, very important to interpret all the laws in our country. And so also one of the reason that the no man will come into the and then the legislature should enact strict laws strict laws and strict laws for strict laws that that they can protect the women victims from the culprits, and they should implement those laws with the help of police forces and with the help of other personals also. So thank you, and thank you for hearing my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other questions, audience? Any other questions?
But I have to ask, sir. Is it possible for an Indian judicial system to wind
Yes,
up
sir.
the cases?
Sir, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, yes.
Is it possible for the Indian judicial system to no? There are many cases are pending. It's
Yeah.
going on very slow. How to
Mhm.
make it rapid fire? All the cases should be solved. Any suggestion you will give to the Indian judicial system?
Yeah, sir, I would like to suggest that they should form a special court to deal with the cases of women offenses, and as well as the appointment of judicial officers are very slow. So they should appoint judicial officers every year, and they should go for all India judicial services that will help them to get good officers. And with the help of this thing, I think the judiciary can solve many pending cases before them.